chaos started right after second meal on the Virexol Prime, an alien research ship floating near the gas lanes of Nilistria Sector 6. The crew had just finished adjusting the air filters and were starting a regular cleaning cycle when a human crew member, Mark Benson, suddenly stopped walking and made a loud noise from his face. The first sneeze came out of nowhere. His back bent forward, his whole body jerked, and his head snapped down as a powerful sound blasted from his nose and mouth. Almost 120 decibels. It echoed through the hallway. Everyone froze. Dr. Keltoon, the head alien medic, stopped what he was doing. His assistants, Zenik and Vorlik, ducked behind a control panel. The ship's AI flashed red. It warned of a pressure shock and possible biohazard. Something had been sprayed into the air. Mark leaned against the wall, groaning and wiping his nose. "Sorry," he said, his voice rough. "Allergies." Then it happened again. And again. Each time, his body jerked, his eyes shut tight, and he let out another blast. The spray was so strong it fried a device on his belt. Keltoon slammed the emergency alert. "Medical emergency on Deck 4. Human brain instability. Possible poison in the air. Lock it down." Mark, still sneezing and barely able to talk, tried to explain. No, I'm okay. It's just..." Another sneeze cut him off. "Ugh, probably ragweed, or something in the air filters." The medbay doors slammed open. Isolation pods extended from the walls. The floor vents hissed disinfectant mist. A containment bubble surged up around Mark, catching his next sneeze mid-blast and deflecting it in a shimmering energy arc. 2 med drones darted in, scanning every angle of his face, chest, and throat. "Hemoid erratic, thoracic pressure spikes," one drone reported. "Suborbital fluid discharge consistent with retinal strain, cranial vessel dilation noted. Vocalization decibels surpass acceptable range for humanoid function." Keltoon clicked his digits across the panel. "Respiratory collapse? Neuromuscular seizure disorder? Has he been exposed to E-class pollen?" "You missed. It was allergies," Zenik offered, cautiously. "Possible," Keltoon hissed. "No species would tolerate such repeated systemic trauma from a benign substance. He must be malfunctioning. Run a full spectral toxicity panel." Inside the bubble, Mark sat hunched, red-eyed, his nose streaming. "I'm not malfunctioning," he said, his voice raw. "It's hay fever. It happens every year. I've got meds. Just gimme." He sneezed again, violently, and the bubble pulsed red. The lights dimmed for a moment as the power grid adjusted to the noise pressure. Keltoon turned to Vorlik. "Prepare an anti-seizure injection and respiratory stabilizers. Initiate neural dampening field. If his thoracic cavity ruptures, we'll need to regrow lung tissue." "I don't need a field," Mark gasped. "Just antihistamines." No one moved. "Histamines?" Vorlik repeated, tilting his head in confusion. "The inflammatory neurochemicals? Why would one ingest a counteragent to a self-initiated immune cascade?" "Because the immune system is overreacting to pollen," Mark said. "Dust, mold, cat dander, stuff like that." The room fell silent. Keltoon leaned forward, his eye ridges narrowing. "You are informing us that your own immune defense detects harmless environmental particles as pathogens and responds by trying to eject them through explosive craniothoracic force?" Mark sniffed. "Yeah, it sucks." Keltoon's fronds twitched, a gesture Zenik knew meant sheer horror. "And you live like this?" Beneath the thick layers of spring. Keltoon activated the medbay's internal alert. "This is a species-level crisis. Log for Central Archives. Human immune systems initiate aggressive symptomatic warfare against non-lethal particulates, causing repeated self-damage in what appears to be a form of biological madness." Mark coughed, slumping back against the isolation wall. "Look, it's just allergies. Give me some loratadine and let me lie down." Zenik stepped forward cautiously. "I believe I have some data from the last joint physiology seminar. They carry various compounds called antihistamines. They take them regularly to suppress these immune overreactions. Keltoon looked at him like he'd said the floor was made of cheese. Regularly? They endure this? Routinely? Apparently so. Mark sneezed again, shuddering. The containment bubble dimmed. Keltoon flinched. Zenek turned to Mark. Have you suffered thoracic ruptures from this activity in the past? No, but I've pulled a rib muscle once. That was bad. Vorlik nearly dropped his data rod. Heat damage skeletal muscle sneezing? I didn't stretch, Mark muttered, eyes watering. A long silence fell. One of the med drones quietly projected a 3D model of Mark's chest cavity, highlighting stress fractures and pressure points. Another tracked tear flow velocity from both eyes. Keltoon stared at the diagram. And yet, he speaks, stands, remains conscious under such duress? I'm not dying, Mark mumbled. I just need tissues. And meds. Vorlik's limbs twitched in disbelief. Why did we not detect this in prior exchanges with humans? They usually keep it under control, Zenek explained. This ship doesn't have an Earth-napped environmental profile. Our filters may have missed something. Unacceptable, Keltoon snapped. Recalibrate the filtration units, and someone get this human his histamine suppressors before he ruptures an organ. As Zenek ran off to procure medication, Keltoon knelt by the containment bubble and stared at Mark, who sat sniffling and blinking through tears. To think, he murmured, a species whose own immune system turns upon them without provocation, and they call this normal. How? How do you survive such biology? Mark coughed weakly. With sarcasm and antihistamines. Keltoon slowly rose. No wonder your kind reached spaceflight. Only desperation could drive such beings off their own planet. Mark gave a wheezing laugh and sneezed again. Keltoon grimaced. That sound should not exist. Mark nodded blearily. Tell me about it. 4 hours later, Mark lay in the medbay's recovery lounge, bundled in a humidity-controlled blanket with an oxygen mask and a damp cloth over his eyes. His voice was hoarse, his nose looked like it had been through a wind tunnel, and his vitals were still flagged for irregular respiration. Next to him stood an assortment of puzzled alien medics, each with a data tablet full of unanswered questions. The antihistamines had kicked in, but not before Mark had sneezed himself into a near migraine, strained his intercostal muscles, and vomited twice from sheer force. Keltoon personally declared the entire incident a biologically catastrophic event masquerading as a routine inconvenience. Still, Mark lived. It is under control now, Zenek reported to the crew assembly, who had been called for a full review. But it took 37 minutes for the medication to reduce the immune hyperactivity. His blood pressure normalized only after we increased ambient humidity and isolated him from all possible particulate vector. Keltoon tapped his fingers across the tablet. This medication, loratadine, it suppresses histamine response across systemic receptors, but only for a limited period? Yes. Humans must re-administer daily during exposure season. Keltoon blinked. You mean he must relive this chaos every 24 units? Correct, unless he moves off planet or takes immunotherapy, which, according to his file, he abandoned because it took too long. Keltoon looked down at Mark, who mumbled through the oxygen mask. Was busy. Forgot the appointments. Keltoon took a deliberate step back, as if fearing the illness might leap up and wrestle him to the ground. The next 2 days became an all-departmental scramble to allergen-proof the Virexol Prime. Ventilation schematics were reviewed. The hydroponics bay was inspected for rogue pollen-producing species. The cleaning drones received a firmware upgrade to include particulate scans. Filters were reinforced with triple-layer synthweave. Despite that, Mark sneezed again during morning diagnostics. Not as violently, but still loud enough to knock over a tray of instruments. Keltoon swiveled from his post. You are still reacting? I forgot to take the pill, Mark muttered. I'll get it now. Zenek quickly handed it over, followed by water. Here, take it with fluid. Keltoon stared in utter bafflement. He forgets. He forgets the one compound standing between him and immune anarchy. Mark swallowed the pill and wiped his eyes. Look, it's not like I want to sneeze until my soul exits my body. Sometimes I'm tired, or distracted, or I ran out of meds and didn't restock. That is negligent, Keltoon said firmly. With such unstable biology, your species should employ stricter self-maintenance protocols. Mark sighed. You try remembering a refill when you've got system diagnostics, schedule overlap with the Ilyari delegation, and a quartermaster who thinks soap is a luxury fluid. Keltoon turned back to the team. This further proves the human species evolved under severe ecological duress. Their bodies are battlefields. Their survival is a statistical improbability. Mark groaned. Thanks, that helps. Later that evening, Vorlich quietly ran a simulation of the average human allergy season using Mark's physiological data. The AI flagged 16 separate risk alerts, including cerebrovascular stress, auditory damage from repeated sneezes, rib strain, and sleep disruption. It flagged the species as marginally survivable. Vorlich stared at the report. They should not be alive. Zenek adjusted his coat, yet they persist. With sarcasm, apparently. Meanwhile, Mark was lying half upright in bed, scrolling a screen with watery eyes. His ribs still ached when he laughed. He had sneezed 53 times since the incident and pulled one of the intercostal muscles on his left side. The medical scan confirmed it wasn't a tear, just a strain. But it meant breathing too deep still hurt. Okay, Mark whispered, eyes still red. No laughing, no spice, no walking near the botanical display. Got it? Keltoon entered with a tray. Your nutrient gel, neutral pH, low particulate. Drink it in small increments. Mark took it carefully. Thanks. Keltoon sat across from him, visibly cautious. Do all humans experience these attacks? About 30%. Some worse than others, some grow out of it. I didn't. Does your species not find this inefficient? Mark blinked. Sure. But we adapt. Keltoon gestured toward the data screen. There is no biological logic to this. Your immune system is designed to repel infection and cellular threat. Why would it mistake a non-reactive spore for a viral agent and respond with such ferocity? Mark shrugged weakly. Evolution isn't perfect. We inherited a lot of weird traits. I guess early humans weren't dying from pollen, so the trait never got weeded out. Keltoon looked stricken. So your species simply tolerates immune betrayal as ambient inconvenience? We have a whole industry for it, Mark said. Allergy meds, nasal sprays, air purifiers, hypoallergenic everything. There's even a sport where people run outside through clouds of pollen. It's called fun. Keltoon slowly rose. That explains nothing. Zenek poked his head into the doorway. Captain requests update on environmental recalibration. Also, Mark, the ambassador from Zeltha 9, wants to reschedule. She says she witnessed your episode and requires confirmation you're not contagious. I'm not, Mark said hoarsely. Tell her it's not a virus. Zenek hesitated. She also requested footage for scientific analysis. Mark sighed. Tell her no. And delete the video. Keltoon stood at the threshold, watching Mark carefully reposition himself, wincing as he tried to find a position that didn't stress his ribs. Mark, he said quietly, have you ever suffered anaphylaxis? Mark nodded. Once. Peanuts. Swelled up like a beach ball. That's why I don't eat trail mix anymore. Keltoon closed his data tab slowly, as if terrified of what else he might learn. Your species truly endures all this, and yet you venture off-world. We don't like it, Mark said, rubbing his temples. We just don't let it stop us. Zenek watched him with a mixture of curiosity and concern. Do you want us to request a human-compatible allergen filtration mask from Earth Command? That'd help. Maybe some new meds and tissues. I'm out again. Keltoon nodded and turned to leave. Understood. We will accommodate your ongoing crisis. Mark laughed once, then winced and clutched his side. Please don't call it that. Keltoon didn't answer. He walked into the corridor muttering, immune betrayal, nasal violence, biological madness. Inside the medbay, Mark leaned back and whispered, spring in space. By the fourth day, Mark was walking upright again, but still moving like someone recovering from a mild chest contusion, which in a way he was. His intercostal strain was responding to rest and non-steroidal anti-inflammatory patches, and his energy levels had returned to about 80%. He still sneezed at least twice every standard hour, but each episode was quieter, less theatrical. The medbay's central AI now recognized a chow as a non-critical event, though it still flagged it for observational purposes. Zenek noticed a pattern. The sneezing was worst after Mark left his quarters. The filtration systems in the common decks, even after upgrades, still allowed trace particulates through. One of the supply crates had been shipped from a trading post that stocked Zilari moss, known to shed fibrous spores when warm. So began the first ever interstellar allergy containment protocol designed around a single human. By midday, engineers had lined Mark's cabin door with a double-seal vestibule. Portable air scrubbers were placed along his walking route. The ship's hydroponics bay was placed under temporary lockdown. One very offended botanist filed a complaint. Mark read the complaint while eating a bland oatmeal substitute. She's mad her pollen experiments are on pause? Keltoon replied without looking up from his terminal. She believes the presence of your immune instability is a statistical anomaly not warranting environmental suppression. I'd love to argue, but I just sneezed out half my brain this morning, so... Keltoon turned the screen. I've redesigned your work schedule to allow minimal exposure to shared areas. Your command console is now linked via virtual relay. You may operate from quarantine or command annex. Great, Mark muttered. Remote work in space, just like Earth. That evening, during a ship-wide systems recalibration, Mark sat alone in the annex, sipping something warm and nasal-friendly, eyes still slightly puffy. Outside the transparent bulkhead, two Inari techs adjusted the ventilation nozzles while a drone scrubbed the floor with static foam. Vordlik entered, holding a new tablet. We've run comparative diagnostics. Your immune flare-up began within 20 hours of atmospheric recirculation from Cargo Bay 2. Mark raised a brow. The one with the agricultural samples? Affirmative. The local storage bins had traces of Terran-like spore analogs. So you brought alien ragweed aboard? It appears so. Mark shook his head. That's just perfect. Borleek sat across from him. I've also studied your medical file. The anaphylaxis event, peanuts, was cataloged as life-threatening. Yeah, took 2 shots of epinephrine and an overnight stay in urgent care. Borleek nodded slowly. Your body has waged war on food, air, animals, and seasonal plant life. And yet your civilization insists on integrating such variables instead of isolating them. We do our best, Mark said, but life's full of stuff that wants to mess with you. We've learned to manage, not avoid. The door hissed open. Zenek entered, carrying a flat case. The allergen mask arrived from Earth Command. It includes 3 filter settings and a nasal microsupplement that coats the sinuses. Mark opened it and chuckled. This looks like something out of a sci-fi movie. You're in one, Zenek replied. Mark tried it on. It sealed over his lower face with a low hum. His voice came through a soft filter. This might actually work. Designed for desert pollen storms, Zenek said, should reduce inhaled particulates by 99%. The mask helped. Within hours, the sneezing dropped to 0. The red around Mark's eyes faded. His voice began to lose the gravelly rasp of a man who'd spent too long shouting into a hurricane. He still had to avoid the hydroponics bay, and the botanist still hadn't forgiven him. But the worst was clearly behind him. Or so they thought. 2 days later, during a diplomatic meet-and-greet with the Jixar delegation, Mark removed the mask temporarily out of courtesy. The moment he inhaled, his face twitched. Zenek, seated 2 chairs down, stiffened. No. Don't. Mark raised a hand. I can suppress. He sneezed so violently his forehead hit the table. The Juzari ambassador leapt to her feet, knocking over a platter of glowing fruit segments. He is expelling fluids. Is this a threat display? Keltoon shot up. No, it's immune overactivity. Harmless. Stay calm. The ambassador hissed. It released from the nose. The nose. Zenek hurried forward with a handkerchief and mask. We apologize. He is experiencing earthbound physiological conflict with trace air contents. The ambassador turned to Mark. You suffer this and still engage in diplomacy? Mark dabbed at his nose. Yeah, welcome to humanity. She narrowed her eyes. You are formidable and unwise. Mark blinked. I'll take it. After the meeting, Keltoon briefed the command staff. We must add environmental adaptation clauses to human interaction protocols. This level of biological dysfunction cannot be ignored. Mark leaned in from the doorway. It's not dysfunction. It's just nature being annoying. Keltoon tapped his screen. It's biological sabotage. You're dramatic. Zenek looked up. Are you cleared to return to regular duty? Tomorrow morning, Mark said. Ribs still sore. No lifting or hard movement until it heals completely. Keltoon nodded. We'll monitor vitals. No further containment unless necessary. Mark took a deep breath. Thanks for the support, even if you think I'm a biological disaster. Keltoon didn't look up. You are. But you're our biological disaster now. Mark gave a soft laugh, then winced. Still hurts when I do that. Keltoon waved a scanner. 3 more days, then full thoracic mobility. Zenek walked beside Mark as they left the room. So, will you ask Earth for permanent clearance to bring allergy meds in bulk? Mark nodded. Yeah, I'm not going through that again. Zenek gave a rare smile. I hope not. But if you do, we're ready. Mark adjusted the mask, stepped into the corridor, and inhaled filtered air without flinching. Progress. The official report was completed 2 days later. Titled Observations of Persistent Immune System Misidentification Syndrome in Homo sapiens, it was 26 pages long and flagged under Anomalous Non-Contagious Events. Keltoon submitted it with more footnotes than any medical document he'd ever compiled. It began with the phrase, "This is not satire." By then, Mark's intercostal strain had nearly healed, and he was back on limited duty without the constant risk of ejecting his lungs into someone's lunch. The face mask had become part of his standard equipment, along with a pocket inhaler of cromolyn sodium and a gel packet containing cetirizine hydrochloride. Earth Command approved a 6-month shipment of allergy relief supplies and forwarded an optional immunotherapy regimen, which Mark promptly ignored. I'm not getting 5 microneedles every week, he told Zenek, peeling a strip of medical tape from his side. Not unless someone builds a version that tastes like coffee. The Virexol Prime gradually returned to normalcy. The hydroponics bay reopened with additional biocontainment layers. Airflow patterns were optimized to isolate known human reactive particulates. A crew-wide memo was circulated explaining what a sneeze was. It included sound clips, diagrams, and a list of do not panic reminders. The most interesting change came during a new batch of alien recruits from the Gesari Union. During orientation, one trainee asked, "What is the species word high-pressure thoracic expulsion reflex we keep hearing about?" Keltoon closed his eyes. That would be the human sneeze. And it's not aggressive? It is both involuntary and absurd. The Gesari nodded, unsure. Mark overheard that and muttered to Zenek, "He's not wrong." Zenek handed him a monitoring band. "Keep this on for another 3 days, just to verify your respiratory baseline stabilizes." "I feel fine." "You said that last time. 5 minutes before you collapsed into a sneeze loop that triggered 2 drone evacuations." Mark groaned. "Okay, fair." One of the stranger side effects of the ordeal was his unexpected celebrity. Footage of his initial outburst, though edited for privacy, had made its way into a med school curriculum on Varnus Prime. A clip of him sneezing 4 times in 11 seconds was considered unbelievable biological behavior and sparked philosophical debates about evolutionary randomness. In the break lounge, someone had printed a still frame of Mark mid-sneeze and stuck it to the beverage dispenser. It read, "Caution, may cause structural damage." Mark sipped his tea and eyed it with a sigh. "I'm never living this down." Keltoon passed by with his usual brisk pace. "You're now part of documented alien medical education. Your suffering has academic value." Comforting. The final surprise came during a visit to the Juxari delegation's research vessel. Their ambassador, who had initially reacted with alarm, now welcomed Mark with a respectful bow. "Your species lives in constant biological defiance," she said. "It is not weakness. It is endurance." Mark blinked. "You're serious?" "We train our warriors to endure toxic gas, hypothermia, and venom. You endure spring." Mark laughed gently. "Spring is worse." Back on the Viraxol Prime, Keltoon convened a final review. Mark's condition was stable, his exposure had been reduced, the updated protocols were in place, and the rest of the crew had learned something new. Humans were not just adaptable, they were walking paradoxes of fragility and grit. Keltoon closed the file with a firm nod. Final status: the human has survived his immune system. Zenik added quietly, "Again." Vorlik grunted. "Let us hope it does not return." "It will," Mark said, leaning against the doorframe. "Give it 6 months. Or whenever someone opens a crate of space basil." Keltoon's fronds drooped. "I will requisition more masks." As Mark turned to leave, he paused. "Hey, thanks for, not treating me like a walking emergency once I stopped being one." Toon eyed him carefully. "You are not an emergency. You are an unpredictable statistical variable with legs." Mark grinned. "Close enough." Later that night, in his bunk, Mark finally slept uninterrupted. No chest spasms, no face-mac alarms, just calm, filtered air. It wasn't Earth, but it was breathable. And for once, his immune system didn't object. Somewhere in the medical archives, his file remained tagged with an orange label, "Non-contagious anomaly, known to sneeze violently, monitor during atmospheric shifts." And on the wall outside the med bay, someone added a new placard. "Do not mistake violent sneezing for collapse. Human still operational."